Okay, so this is the template that we created. And it does come with a README. Let me zoom in on that so you can actually see it. So there's a couple things you can do. And or I guess I can show it really quick. Let's just go preview it so we can see what it looks like. So just a bit very basic, simple NFT mint site. Where you can go in, change all the details. It does default, like if you were to connect a wallet and try to mint something, it does default all these variables here, but you can easily go into the template to change them. It also requires the contract address to be specified, because obviously that's going to be different. Right now, you can actually see it actually does a check to make sure that that address is in there before you can really do anything anyways. But if I go back, very simple to do, basically on the home page here. And see if I remember, where is that? On the page binding, there's this variable here, and this is where you would essentially enter that address. And then that will then tie it to that specific contract. If we go back here, so there's a couple other things you can do. So this is setting that contract address, which was that action we just looked at. The next thing is you can go into the page header. So it already has some predefined page headers. That way it has like all the open graph data. So when you do share this link, it shows all like the Facebook or Twitter or little icons and things like that. But it's very basic. You just go into the page headers, open that page header, and then it's split out by the different types. And you would essentially just replace the values in here depending on what you're wanting to change. So I don't know if there's any questions. It's very basic.
Where would you grab the values that you're replacing this with, Dorian?
For the title and the description is just typed in. So you would just change this static text here to whatever you're changing it to. The icon, if you have an external source, you would just change the href here. If you're uploading it into the media library, then you would go in here, upload your image. Once you upload it, you can open it and then copy that CDN path and then paste that into all the page header areas where you see that link. So there's like 3 of them.
Gotcha. Okay. And you said this one's already set up with like a generic mint action?
It is, yeah. So if we go back here and we follow here, first it does a connect, then it does the check. Based on if it's successful, then it's going to set the state that the wallet is connected, which does a bunch of things already. It handles a bunch of scenarios. Then what that does is it binds the action on this button. It also changes the label to mint now, and it binds it to this condition where here it just does another check to make sure that you actually have a valid address in there. If you do, then it starts to go through the actual mint process. So on here, this is where you can modify your ETH price. You can modify the gas. And then it handles all the different scenarios based on every step. And the way it does that is as it progresses through the mint, it loads this processing window into a lightbox that's actually hidden here, which is here. You just can't see it. And what it does, it actually just starts to change the opacity of the image. So it starts to become more visible as it progresses through each step. And then it changes some of the labels. And you can go through each of the steps here to see what it's actually doing and what text it's actually outputting. So it's just going through each of those. And then it also handles if there's an error. And then at the end, it then also gives you a link to that transaction directly on Etherscan, which will show up here. You'll see a little link at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's already set up on here. You just need to go in and kind of swap your different values.
Yeah, the main thing is that contract address, update your page headers, update the UI here, the display to whatever your price and total supply is.
Mhm.
And then also on the mint action, go update the price and the gas if you need to modify any of that.
Excellent. Okay. So does anyone have questions on this before I ask the questions that I have?
My only immediate question, and this is more of like a generic Web3 question. I saw you had like the ability, we set the gas price. Was that, did I see that correctly?
Yeah, on the action, I'm actually not 100% sure how that's all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can probably
Yeah,
add some info here because I just it was kind of like some trial and error when we were first figuring this stuff out. But you can set the gas price there, and if you know it, so you can run like gas optimizers and gas estimators and like figure out what it should be and set it if you want. But actually, what I recommend and what I do now is I leave the gas blank and let MetaMask guess for you, because MetaMask can actually see based on the contract how much gas it's going to need, and then knows the network, and MetaMask will give you a much better estimate. And so, but it's kind of tricky right now. I have to like fix this in the action. If you just remove the gas, the mint function doesn't run because it sets the gas as null instead of like blank. So you actually have to go in the JSON. You have to like clear it out, go in the JSON and change the word null to just like double quote. So it's like,
Can you show us this?
oh yeah. Or maybe if Dorian, if you want to, otherwise I'll share my screen.
yeah, I can go into it. Do you know what that function is?
If you just go to the action itself and go to the JSON.
Oh, it's in the action.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So
I mean in your flow, like when you run the min action and you set the gas with the input, that's where it is. So
in here, we would
yeah, you
just
can
set
clear
it.
out that input. You don't have to clear it out now if you don't want, but you can clear out that input so it's blank. That's what you want, and then MetaMask sets your gas for you. But because of the bug, you have to go into the JSON of this action. So it's like the 3-dot menu on this action. And yeah, if you just go to that value, Dorian, yeah, you just have to make it, instead of whatever it is, it just has to be quote, like that. Because when you set it to blank in the interface, it doesn't do quote, it does the word null.
Gotcha.
But I'm going to fix that. I have a couple of updates to this action that we need. So I'm going to definitely fix that at some point in the future. It's on my list. I just didn't do it yet.
Yeah. So really it should be, if you want to use the MetaMask gas calcs, clear this out, go into the JSON of it, and then delete the null and just make sure it's quote.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
And I would recommend basically always doing that unless you really know what you're doing. You might as well let MetaMask set it. And then Ray, I see that there's a question about, can you control the per gas bid and stuff? So this was just a UI decision on our part. If you go into the action itself, you can control everything. Like it's all written out, so you can send everything if you want to. But we didn't expose all the, like there's like 3 settings, I think, for gas, or there's at least 2, but there might be 3. We didn't expose that all because most people don't know what it means, and it's just confusing in the action. So I'd recommend, if you do want to control that stuff, you can modify the action to add your own input, or you can just go directly to the JSON of the action and set those values. And yeah, Dorian, if you want to show that, that's in the function.
I would actually just duplicate it that way.
Yeah, I mean, duplicating is definitely
up, you know, still have the original there.
sorry, during the function, the JavaScript.
Gotcha. I was looking at the type to see.
And you could also, yeah, I guess in where you were is where you'd add an input. If I were building, I probably wouldn't add an input for myself. That's more like something you do if, you know, you're going to use it over and over and over. But yeah, in the JavaScript here, I don't think it's even listed as an input, but
Yeah.
on like around line 38 or 30 or 40. So you can see right there, there's gas coming from a variable, and then there's 2 other gas values that are set to null. Those are the other gas values that you're allowed to set. We just, like, if you leave any of these, MetaMask will take care of it for you. So we were just kind of like letting that happen. And it is what I'd recommend. And so like from a UX perspective, we just made that decision.
Okay. Is there any reason why you would want to set your own gas price versus letting MetaMask handle it?
I think the reasons, like if you have a reason, that means you really know what you're doing. Like I don't think there's like a reason for an average person to come in with like a normal like mint function and need to do any of that. I think that's why I say it's smarter to let MetaMask do it. But I mean, there's so many things you can do with Ethereum transactions. Like I'm sure there's people that need to change it for specific reasons. I don't even know off the top of my head, really. Like one time I did it to make sure that the contract would be really cheap for people to mint. So I like hard coded that in. And then if people minted two, it failed because it wasn't enough. It was like a mistake. So we had to like go like update it and fix it. It was a whole thing. So I'm just like, oh, just let MetaMask handle that. It's not worth it.
Yeah. So I think we'll probably end up updating that action anyways for this pattern. So that by default, it's letting MetaMask handle it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a comment about, yeah, it's like a very hype project. You might need to input the higher gas. And I think like maybe for the really hype projects, most people know how to just do that in MetaMask. Like if you're gonna win a gas war, you already know how to do that in MetaMask. So even that scenario, I'd say it's probably fine.
I agree.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Thanks.
So let's go back to where we were and see if anyone has any remaining questions. All right, so it looks like for the Connect wallet button, it's already got the flow set up. You just need to input and get it connected with your stuff, and then maybe make that MetaMask adjustment. Or I'm sorry, that adjustment if you want MetaMask to calc the gas for you. Okay, anything else on this one? We can Dorian, can you go back into the Connect MetaMask flow?
Yeah.
Let's just kind of take a look at it and see. So you've got all the different options here.
Yeah, and this is using the styled MetaMask block that Drew created. I
Mhm.
literally just dropped that into this project and it brought and connected all these actions for me. And it has
Nice.
all the different errors and everything.
When you use the styled one, it looks good too when you drop it in. You can do the unstyled if you need to like match it to your site, but the styled
Mhm.
one's pretty convenient.
Yeah. The only thing I ended up doing was, because it already comes with the set state when
Mhm.
once it's connected. Where was that? Oh, right here. I'm just changing the label of the button. Instead of saying connect wallet, it changes to mint now, and then sets the interaction that actually checks for the contract address. If it's there, then it runs through the mint process. So those were the only two steps that were added.
Okay, awesome. And are there instructions in here for how to upload the artwork so that it appears in the, I'm guessing that's a grid.
Which one here? No, these are just static.
Those
It's
are just static files.
Yeah, it's just the standard display.
But to be clear, that's completely separate of the NFT artwork.
Yeah.
But there's a whole separate side of this, which is what I was mentioning when you were switching accounts, which is like you need to come with the contract and the artwork and the metadata already done, and then you just use this. And so we will, like, we're gonna accommodate all that stuff in the future. I think anyway, we're working towards it. And so that's what I think I figured out as like a path to actually accommodate all that. So right now, you know, there's no way through Builder universally anyway to like go create a smart contract, upload artwork and all that. You kind of have to
Do
figure
all
that
that
out
for you.
I mean, we've done it through Builder plenty of times where we create custom things. So you can do it through Builder, but you know, we don't have an interface for you to go do that easily or a template or anything.
Gotcha.
Third Web makes that so easy in case someone that watches this in the future needs it. Like Third Webs is really easy. There might be other ones too, but I'm using Third Web and it's awesome. And the Third Web and NFTinator are two really cool tools to combine the art and then get it live.
Nice.
What was the second one, Josh?
NFTinator, so it's NFT-inator, INATOR.
This might be good to just touch on too for a second, because we want to partner, or even if it's like an informal partnership with Third Web and Manifold we're looking at right now, but like that would be another good one too. And basically, like we're not gonna create something that's really advanced and intricate to generate a contract. So we're not gonna like compete with them. So we're creating a workflow where you can still, you can use Builder to generate a simple contract, or you can use any of those other services and then come in and just like plug our website on top. Like that's our goal. So we're not actually, we love all those services ourselves. We ran into a lot of problems with, like if you use Third Web or Manifold, sometimes there's quirky things in their contract that they have to do to make a robust system, but that make it hard for us to just interact with. So we kind of like really were needing this solution of like an actual totally custom, not walled garden contract. And so that's kind of what we're building. But once we make it, like it'll be pretty simple, I think. And I think a lot of times people will end up using the Third Web or something else, and it'll make a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. So Mike had a question. He's asking, so to replace the images easily, we would use the input like he stated before.
Yeah, these all just come from the library. So just by selecting on the element, you can
Okay,
just go here, upload a new one, or select a different one if it's already there. And that's
Okay.
all these are on here.
okay. So where, sorry, I'm actually not super well versed in any of the Web3 stuff. So I'm thinking about it like, hey, if I'm an artist and I'm trying to, you know, put my NFTs out there to be minted, where am I putting my images?
That's the $1 million question. But that's like, you missed a little bit. I don't know how much I said exactly, but like, I'm so excited about this solution we found because we're going to solve that problem. And that's like the huge problem for everyone right now. So the way you do it today is through Third Web or Manifold or NFTinator. You get, you know, you go through them, they're all like a little different, but you'll somehow create a contract and somehow upload artwork to it yourself. Usually you can get them to be like public mints too, which is like another step, but a lot of artists, they just need to put a collection up and upload themselves. And so once you do that, and once you have the contract and it's on the blockchain, then like any other service can interact with it because it's on the blockchain. So that's where Builder comes in, you know, as the next step past that. But yeah, that stuff is just a little bit out of our control. So it's a kind of another topic, but you know,
Okay.
it's a big issue really. Because
All
most
right,
people
so let's clarify. People need to already have some things in place before they can use this
right,
to launch a Mint website.
right.
Okay. Okay.
They
Does
basically
it-
just have to have the smart contract deployed at this point for this to be useful.
Yep. You have
Gotcha.
to have the smart contract deployed, and then what will happen is if you just deployed a smart contract only, someone could mint to it through a Builder site, but that NFT would be nothing. Like it wouldn't have an image, it wouldn't have any data associated with it. It would exist, it would be tied to someone's wallet, like it would be in their wallet, but it would be nothing. So you have to come with a smart contract and you have to come with some form of metadata. So like we've done it, like in the Builder passes, they generate the artwork when you mint them. We're like creating that metadata through Builder. So you can actually build a mint site that also generates your metadata, but we don't have templates for that. And you need to have a server to host the metadata. Well, it's so complicated. You can use IPFS to host it. So you can actually get it all done without anything extra, but it's extra steps that we just haven't quite like fleshed out on our end yet, but we will, I think, you know.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions on this or any specific parts of the actions they want to see? Where can you find this one, Dorian?
When you add a project or create a new project.
Okay.
I think that's Web3 only, so you have to have a studio.
It is
pass.
Web3 only.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's the simple NFT mint site.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you for walking us through that, Dorian. It looks.
Yeah, that was
super
actually
cool.
good. I don't know why I thought we couldn't do that, but that was really good. I mean, I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
Yes. Very cool. Thank you, Dorian. It looks great.
Yeah.
All right. So next up on our list, let me see here. It looks like Emmanuel has a couple questions that we can go through. So yeah, why don't we go through that first, and then we can go and take a look at some of the other stuff we have. Okay, Emmanuel, you are up. So it looks like you've got a couple CSS questions. Number one, inconsistencies with ellipsis use, and two, making grid row heights the same. So do you have something you're working on you want to show, or you just want to talk concept?
No, I can show.
Okay.
All right. share. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I've been trying to figure out this ellipsis thing, and the basic idea was setting it up so after 2 rows, or in this case 3 rows, kick in the ellipsis. Something I've noticed, and I don't know if it's a CSS issue or not, but you see this, focus on this one. Audience struggles to find out how ... And I found that if I change the word find to something else, it doesn't do the ... it just kills it after that sentence. I think it was if I change it from find to figure out, and then refresh it. I hope that was the word. Nope, that's not it. Oh, find themselves. That's what the sentence was. Find.
Yeah, I think it's pushing it out because they had already lost one of the dots. It was only showing 2.
To find themselves like this. So is that a so I just wanted to know if that's a me thing, a CSS thing.
Are you using the like CSS? I forget what it's called right now, but it's a CSS thing that cuts off the thing and puts an ellipsis.
I'm using, here's the lines. I'm just going to put that somewhere that you can actually see it.
Yeah. I see. I think it's like that part's probably all correct, but I think the container, which might even be this, is overflow hidden. And so like somehow it's like going outside the container maybe, because it looks like what happened was we saw 3 and then we added a little more length. We just saw 2. So that's what it looks like. I'm not sure.
And then this one, it just stops. No ellipsis. It does not a new word, even though there's a whole other word there.
Can you right click on the word find and inspect it?
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh, I should show you guys this fun tool I found called CSS Scanup or something. You just want it on the word itself, or?
I was looking at. It's doing.
There's an overflow hidden on that, but I don't know why it would overflow. Like it shouldn't.
Yeah, the hidden's correct. Could you do a normal
Sure.
browser inspect? I'm not too familiar, and just it's throwing me off a little bit.
Right click.
There you go.
Oh, I should have not remembered, I'm not in regular browser, so it's behavior. Give me 1 second, let me find a normal browser.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I've never seen that menu.
Yeah,
Is this Chrome or what? What browser is this?
It's coherent, so it makes a desktop app of a website type thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, it could be a browser thing.
Oh,
No.
yeah. It's funny. Yeah, because the code all looked correct actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't really see anything that was up with it.
Yeah, it's just the way why the word change would have done that. Okay, I'll investigate that further. The second question was in terms of height alignment. So I think for now, I wanted the entire row to align, even though these are 2 elements. Let me show you this thing. So this is one, right? One div with the row header stuff, and then there's the grid next to it. How can I set these up so that they will match in terms of row height?
Yeah, so it'd be on the grid here. And can you open that style on the right side? I think it's align content, I think, or something like that. Or justify content. I can't remember what the property is, but we can try a couple things.
Well, you're trying to align the grid stuff with the thing that's outside the grid, like match those heights.
Yeah, I think he wants the row to all have the same height.
See how that one's like a fake row, and so to match that, you're gonna have to like wrap that and the grid in another div. You might have to do it twice, but it's the align items property and like, right, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, we can see how it's set up because you can do it a million ways. It really depends how you have the grid. But with display grid, you can do align items stretch, I think, and it'll stretch all to the same height.
Stretch, that might be the one I was trying to remember. Okay. And I'll put that on the master grid, not the.
So you'll put it, if you put it on the grid, yeah, like the actual grid element, then it'll do it to all the elements inside. But I don't think that'll make it match the height of that first one. We're gonna have to do something else for that, I think. Unless
Yeah,
I'm
and it looks like
misunderstanding.
you have it. You just need to change it from start to stretch, right?
Yep.
Stretch. Yeah, that looked like it did something. Yep, sure did. Boom, awesome.
Oh, I see. They were in the grid. Yeah, I thought that first one that says when, I thought that was an element outside of the grid. That's what I was getting at. So I was wrong on that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the row.
Got it.
And what I realized is, because I'd originally set up a component here, and pull this and pull that, but it seemed that when I wanted to make this track to the current value, blah, blah, of this, then doing it within the component, I either can figure it out, but it worked clearly this way.
It's like that stuff gets so confusing between grid and flex and then like heights. And especially sometimes when you like flip the flex, so it's columns and rows are switched. It just gets so confusing, but there's usually a way to make it do what you want.
Okay, trying to find the exact one. This way, when I tried to do it this way, with one component and another component, I couldn't get the data collection matching stuff to work.
Yeah.
But fine. This way it also works, so I was able to work my way around it. All right. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Awesome. Easy. Thank you.
Yay. Thanks, Emmanuel. I know you had even chatted in Discord about talking about the difference between grid and I think it was flex.
Yeah, or just like so, we have the full flex GUI in Builder, right? You have that whole spot up top and all the flex stuff. But grid is like this bastard child all the way down in the everything else section.
I didn't know that. That's kind of funny because I use grid way more, but I just write it. I had no idea. We should probably just figure something out.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Well, now that we're about to have a grid kit, maybe we just have a section, the grid will not be lonely by itself anymore. It will have some more friends thanks to Emmanuel. Okay, cool. All right, so let me take a look at what else we had here. Okay, how about this one? So Pigeon Flight, which I love that name, was asking in general if we had any examples of working with an API that uses a callback URL. And Drew was talking about the Stripe actions, saying that they work that way. And then I think Jeroen was also interested in potentially figuring out how to deal with callback. I think he's using a different payment service, but theoretically the same principles should apply, right? So could you guys take us through the Stripe actions and let's talk callback URLs?
Sure.
Dorian, did you have a video that you did on this? Or a template or pattern or something that you chatted?
I think that was
No, that was for the dynamic grid
Okay.
headers and rows. But actually, we just did this in one of Alex's projects.
I was just going to say, didn't we just do this yesterday?
Yeah, on the success URL.
Do you want
Yeah,
to?
I can kind of show maybe. Let me show my
Please.
screen. Let's see. I can just.
Could we
create
see?
an action.
Oh, you just want to create it? Okay, I was going to say maybe.
Well, I don't know if
see it in
Alex
Alex's,
wanted
but no,
to
that's-
show that.
Yeah, totally. Like to help for sure.
You'd be down? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
let's
Yeah.
see it.
Or Dorian, if you want to steer on my, I don't know if you still have it, but let me,
Yeah, I have it.
yeah, go for it. Go nuts.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the Stripe actions in a while, so I don't remember how they're set up. I was actually wondering if I was misunderstanding too, because really, like, I think the concept is pretty straightforward once we see it, but we'll see if it's what everyone meant.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go in this page here just to go look at that action. And basically what it's doing, there was one thing we had to work around. If you note here, we're actually not using one of the default Stripe create a checkout section action. And I'll explain later down the path why we had to change it to use our standard API call. But first, let's go look at what that success URL is, how you can provide it. But essentially, it's just a standard API call. In Stripe's world here, it's a post. You're making that call to their checkout session. Then you're specifying some URL parameters like the mode, the line items, the price, the quantity, etc. The key one here is in their setup, it's called success URL. Most providers like sign in with Twitter or Google, I believe they call it callback URL, but essentially it's the same method. It's basically the URL that the user will be redirected after they successfully do something on that site that you're taking them to. But in this setup here, we're actually pulling it from a variable, and it was just to keep this UI clean. And we were trying different things. But if I go to this variable right before the checkout session, we're just dynamically building the URL by providing the protocol. We're grabbing the subdomain, the domain. The reason we have it structured this way is so that it handles every scenario, whether it's in the preview, whenever Alex deploys to a test deployment or a production deployment, it will always dynamically grab that specific domain and subdomain where it's at, instead of statically sending them. But you can do it in either way. That's just the method that we're doing here. And then what we're doing after that is pointing them to a specific URL page route, which in this case, Alex has it set to a page that goes to a thank you page. And this last part here, in Stripe's world, this is the reason we ended up having to change the action to use our standard API call. And it's because with Stripe, you can do this specific call out here when you send the success URL, where you specify a query parameter. This can be anything you want. That's just the name we picked. But the value for that is to basically check out session ID in curly brackets. And that has to be specific, entered in that way, because that's what Stripe is expecting. And what they do is when they return the user back to this success URL, they actually end up replacing this value here with the actual success ID, because then you can use that ID to do a second call to get any details on that specific transaction that they just did the checkout on. Like if you're trying to get like the products they bought, the quantities, or any detail on that checkout. But because of this is the reason we had to change it to the API call method. And the reason is the standard Stripe checkout session action is using the URL. It basically throws everything in the URL, and it's using that XWW form URL encode method. And for some reason, it just can't handle that curly bracket. It just breaks it, even though Stripe returns a success, but it would return broken JSON. So you couldn't do anything with that. And we couldn't figure out what was happening. And then I ended up changing it to the API call, which our method is just using, we go here. It's just the application JSON, where it's just a key value pair. And that method seemed to work fine, and it didn't break Stripe, which was interesting. So that's the reason there, but that's the setup that we have here, where we're using that, in this case, success URL, to point the user back to a different page in their builder project after they successfully made the payment in Stripe. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, I think I would add to that too, is like, that's kind of that's how Stripe does it. That's pretty much what everyone will do, is like, you provide them a success or a callback URL when you, like in the original API call. And then when they send someone to that URL, they like pass some value. So whether it's like an ID of whatever just happened on their end or whatever, they'll pass some value. So in Builder, it would just be like any other page, you know, that actual callback URL page is just any other page, it just has a URL route. So it's going to get some value in the URL and you can pull it in. Like there's several ways to pull in stuff from a URL in Builder. It's like, it's kind of custom at that point. You just have to handle it. And then in the one scenario where they wouldn't send something, I don't even know actually what that scenario would be, but maybe they would just let you specify a callback URL. If you needed to link that back up to the original user, they'd have to be signed in as a user in your app. And so if they're already signed in your app, you make the API call, it sends them to a callback URL. That callback URL, they'll be signed in on. So, you know, you can kind of like link up a user if you need to do more actions to that user or change something on their, you know, in their user database table, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, super cool.
And then one
mhm.
small thing here on Stripes, you also provide a cancel URL. So that's like if it got directed to the checkout session and the user hits the never mind or back button, this is the URL that they're taken back to. So you can have different URLs for that.
Right on. Nice call out. Okay, Jeroen, does that kind of
Yeah.
guide you as far as, yeah, any further questions?
No, this is good. No, yeah, I've kind of a similar implementation. I use, what is it? Yeah, it's a Dutch paying service. And they also, you can provide this URL and it redirects to a success page on the website as well. But I thought it was an actual callback into the system and that was something different. So, but this is a reroute. Yeah, so I use that one as well. Yeah,
Like
thanks
a
for
web
explaining though. It's really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not technically a callback. This
Like
is like,
in JavaScript, you could have what I would call a technical callback where you're not like redirecting to another page. Yeah. And actually, I mean, we can do that like with all the mint actions do that. There's like a callback that has to wait sometimes a really long time for like a transaction receipt. And in the action, it's just all the callbacks are just set. Like it's just like on receipt on whatever, you know, whatever they are. And it just waits like Builder, the queue continues. So other actions happen and whatever you put in that JavaScript runs when it comes back to Builder. So it's you can still handle callbacks.
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, to figure that out. Yeah. How to make it work with my payment service. Yeah. But so far this works fine. Thanks for
Okay. All right. Yeah, always leave it up to Dorian to come up with the best creative solutions for, you know, anything that isn't working 100% or anything we need to work around. Okay, awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for letting us take a peek at this so Dorian could walk us through it. Okay, so let me see, 4:18, yeah, we do have time. So George has a question. We'll go to that before we go back to our agenda. Okay, let's see, George, you'd like to see some examples of storing JSON in a field in a collection for storing multi-value fields like a tag list or a multi-select checkbox group. Do we have anything that we can show that has that? Or should we build something?
I could probably set something up fast for that just to show storage. Like I can talk about some of the stuff you do past that to use it because you have to also like parse it to use it, and that might take a little longer. But
Okay, yeah, let's do
I
it.
can do. I'm just creating a new project while I was talking. Share.
It's you know the kind of stuff that you would store in an array in like a Mongo document or something like that, where you have multi-valued. So you don't create a whole table with relationships. You just want to store
Yeah.
a list of discrete items in a field.
Sometimes I
Also,
do
what are the
that.
limitations on that too? Like how big can it be, or
Yeah.
I actually don't know. I mean, Dorian, you probably know limitations. I don't know. I don't actually know what the limitations are on that. I don't think I've hit ever like a size in a column limitation.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there is a limitation per column. That's that limit we hit whenever we're trying to store the JSON.
Oh, for
When
action.
we're mapping multiple fields. Can't remember what the size is though. I'd have to go look it up and get back to you.
Have,
So
have you ever done any examples of like parent-child relationships where you have a parent ID and just a recursive kind of relationship between like a taxonomy or some kind of a hierarchical?
Yeah, Mark did a video right on
Yeah, parent and child data collections.
Yeah, with relationships, a one to many or a many to
Have
many.
you seen that one, George? I can send it to you.
I may have, but yeah, if you could send it.
is that like basically you just mean like any way to do it, or do you mean something more? Because we have like another system that's like a little more like official with child relationships and of tables that has to do with like restricting access. And like I actually almost never use. I don't know if I've ever used it personally, because I just like use IDs and restricted myself in the database. So I didn't know if that's what you meant. I was coming in here because there's like this whole section in here with access type of like who can edit and view data, and then child collections that are related to it, and you can like invite other users to be able to access your data and stuff like that.
So what does the child collection mean? What does that mean in this case while you're up?
In this case, it's kind of specific. Basically, in this case, we're talking about user restrictions. So it's like if you wanted to create records where only the person who created it can edit it or view it or something, it's like putting that restriction on a collection. So in this case, if you had a child collection, basically any other collection that would, I think maybe I can show it. So I don't have too many collections here, but you select the child collection, you select the key field. So the field basically that's storing this parent ID. And like if you set it up like that, then the child collections get those same user restrictions as the parent collections. That's the real reason that it's here at all. It's just so that you can kind of like go up the chain with the permission settings. But you know, with other databases, like I just store an ID value for any which way and relate things that way. So that's kind of another method.
Yeah, and the benefit of using the settings here is that all this filtering occurs server side.
Right. So it's like, yeah, if you had like a list of projects, say, and there's like users own projects, if you have this restriction set and in your app, you call for a list of all projects, it would only return the ones for that signed user. Like none of the other ones would even come to the browser at all. It's just like, if you need security, you have to do it this way, basically. Because you know the other ways you can hack that. So they could usually you might return a whole set of records and then filter in the browser. It's usually fine. Yeah. Or maybe you don't return them all, but someone could if they hacked it. So that's where if you need more security, you come into this setup.
Yeah, I would like to see an example of that in action. Is there something?
Yeah, the SaaS starter template has all this set up.
Okay.
So if you create a project using that, you'll see the entire setup.
It's risky for me to create projects.
I also did just chat out a link to the office hours where we specifically covered like data collections, relating them to one another. And then there's also a pattern that you can reverse engineer that shows the same thing, similar to the SaaS starter. Yeah.
So this is the SaaS starter. I think it's a little.
Yeah, and you'll want to go into the company. Yeah, give it a second. It's like it's.
I can tell all the pages aren't in, and it could be caused by my Zoom.
Yeah, they're going. There it is. So go into the companies because the company is the parent, and then go into the settings for that.
Okay. So this says.
So on the company here, you can see under child collections, the UI needs some work, but that first one is tasks.
Okay.
So the tasks are automatically server-side filtered against the company ID, and that's so that because on the SaaS starter, you can have multiple users sign up and create their own companies and then associate members under it. And that ensures that it never mixes or returns tasks from other different companies.
And all we do there, like, it's just, you create a column, company ID, and whatever is happening to store these values, you just need to store that company ID, which is from the company's table, the ID field. And then, I guess it's right here.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that was, the rest of it's taken care of in these settings.
So let's say I did a questionnaire, which is actually the thing I'm working on, building a questionnaire where you have a set of questions that belong to a survey. So you have a survey and the survey has questions on it, and the questions can be of multiple types. They can be, you know, just sort of scalar values, but are also multiple select, multiple choice kind of values. And then if I created a submission collection and then assigned that to, so I could basically create a submission collection that has all of the submissions, and then the responses to those submissions would be in a related child collection, right? So you have a submission, and then inside the submission, you'd have a list of responses that are associated with that submission, that survey submission. And those responses would be the answers that are in the survey questions.
And it's
And-
like dynamic, those survey questions can change every time, you mean?
Well, the survey questions would be associated with the survey. So you'd have a survey collection, that's fine. And then you'd create, associated with each survey would have a list of questions. So that would be a standard sort of relational database where the question would have which survey it belongs to in it. The foreign key would be which survey it comes in. And then to find out the list of all the questions for a given survey, you would just do a query, give me all questions where survey equals this.
Yeah.
And then you'd also have the answers. So people would be presented with, you'd come in, you'd say, I want to see a survey on, you know, financial practices or whatever. And it would come back and tell you and give you the questions. You would answer those questions. The answers would be stored in a response collection, which would be, and you would create a new submission that would be based on the questions that were in the survey, right, associated with this given survey. So the software would present you the list of questions. You would answer those questions. The answers to those questions would go into another collection called the responses collection. And that responses collection would be related to a submission which belongs to a specific user. So you could use this technique to basically relate the child collection of responses to the submissions collection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can definitely use it because this will lock it down. So it's basically not hackable on the front end.
Right.
But for data that's you're not too concerned about, you can just do it with standard filtering against the data binding or the set value from a
Yeah,
data.
and we wouldn't want other respondents to be able to see, you know, the responses of anybody else.
Yeah, then exactly.
So-
Then you would
so
use
you-
this setup. There are a couple things to, like, Drew, can you click on the axis type? Just to see that select there.
Access type, oh, yeah.
And guys, just a call out, we were at time here, but we do have a couple of, it looks like, people who maybe want to chat about their data collections real quick. So do you guys have a hard stop?
I don't have a hard stop, I don't
Me
think.
either.
Do you
Okay,
want us to,
let's
like,
see.
to go faster, because I actually think in this scenario, I could probably recommend what I would do in this scenario, which is a little
Okay.
simpler than setting
Okay,
all this
cool.
up.
So let's try
Okay.
to see if Dorian explained this, and then let's see if we can jump over to walking Josh and Kyle through their examples, and then that way everyone gets a little bit of guidance. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over that access type because like the first option, owner creator, if you're using that method, then that works automatically where whoever created the record's the only user that can get access to that record. The all users, then that just becomes a view only. They can view it all, but they can't delete or modify. The user invitation, this is a special one. This is what the SaaS starter uses. So you can use this template to go see how it's all set up. But that one requires there's basically a middle record that's created anytime a task is created. And it basically does that tie and creates that what's considered here the invitation record. And it basically just has the company ID and also the new task created ID. And it uses those relationships to determine if that user has access. So I just wanted to call that out, that there is one extra step required if you're using the user invitation method.
Okay.
That's, I think, why I don't use it, because it's like extra steps that like you really only need if it's security related, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can't. So like, what in this exact situation we're talking about, when you were talking about that responses table, and I don't know, like this isn't like bad practice, but like maybe like a true coder might say this is like too wild, but like I just save all the IDs like up the chain. So I'll have responses table, I'll have a submission ID, a question ID, an answer ID, like anything that it relates. So I'm saving all these ID values in the table, and then that allows you to get them from wherever you need. Like it's versatile. So on the front end, you can mix and match and get whatever you need. And then if you wanted to limit, you could limit just that responses collection. Instead of limiting all the way to the top and like running the whole chain down and adding that complexity, what you really want is in the responses. And I don't know exactly like if you, it might get tricky with responses, right? Because the user itself, the user that created the response can view it and modify it only, that would solve it. But then how can like the admin see the answer? So you might have to actually invite the admin as a user, or there might be more involved. So I don't know. And if it's sensitive data, you might have to do that. Or like if I'm building it for myself, I probably would just not do that and let the responses be somewhat public. But obviously, you know, you can't always do that.
So
Right.
so tied to a user, what's that called? The
owner creator.
Owner creator. So the owner creator one, literally there's nobody who can see that except for the person. There's no way to say, oh, there's a different class of user, like an administrator class of user who could see those entries.
Right.
Okay.
I think technically you could, if you're the builder of the app in Builder, you can go into the data collection and see them, right? Like they're not restricted from you as a builder, but yeah, no one else who's using the app it won't even come to their browser.
Okay. And then, but the user invitation would allow me to add, for example, the owner creator, but also is the owner creator automatically set up as on the user invitation only?
Yeah.
Is that a superset?
Yeah, it does it automatically. It doesn't
Okay.
create any records automatically, but it just uses every record stores created by,
Okay.
and it uses that to pre-filter it on the server before it's brought to the browser.
Okay. And then if we did a user invitation only, that's how we could add
Additional users.
Yeah, the administrative user or anybody with a role of administrator, you could invite them. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, you would basically create, let's just say you're trying to add it to the creator and also your admin user, then you would actually create two of those relationship records. Yeah, if you go in there,
is that in here? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on the task. If you go in there and then go to flows, I've actually never really looked at the setup, but it's in here somewhere. We'll find it.
On which on this list?
The add a task. Go up, go that one. and then go to the flows and check that first action. No, maybe it's on the company. Oh, it's on the company because these are all child, so it just uses the parent.
Gotta zoom out on all the companies.
Yeah,
Is that just like under app or something?
actually,
Far
no,
right.
somewhere
There
right
it
here.
is.
Oh, company detail.
That's the detail, but where's the create?
It might just create
I
it.
think it's created during the login, the sign up
Yeah,
process.
like the user. I
Or
don't know.
maybe it's at the team member. No, check the team member. It's in one of these. I'm not quite sure. No, it'd be the form above, like the create.
Yeah, here you go. So create the user first, and then here is this special table. And this table is automatic, this record association. Like when you set those up in the collection settings, you'll get this record association comes into play.
Okay.
So I don't even know how it works, to be honest. But
Yeah, so you basically pass the collection ID. So you have to tell it what collection you're giving them access to. So in this case, it's the company because that's the parent. It'll roll all those same settings down to any children. Then you pass the specific record ID. And then, which in this case would be the company because that's the record. And then you can pass these settings if they can edit, if they're allowed to invite others, if they can permanent delete, if they can view. And then the last important part is the login ID. Because this
So
is
are all
the
these, are all these records associated with the record association? Are these fields sort of hard coded in the record
They are.
association?
Yeah,
field?
that
Okay,
comes
okay.
with every project. You actually can't even
I was gonna
access
say, I don't think you can access it in
it's
here.
all internal. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can
Okay.
only access it when you're creating a record to it.
Okay,
Okay.
George, does that give you enough to go off of?
Yeah, it gets me. I know there's other people waiting. So yeah, I can
mean,
hog
you'll probably-
everybody all
you
day.
might have more questions, but you can just ask again, because like even me looking at this, I'm like, wow, this is complicated.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of permissions, but it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it is a complex setup.
Okay, awesome. Well,
Someone had asked if you can retroactively add these, which you can, right, Dorian? These
You
Yeah.
can, Josh, to answer that, you can. The only issue would be if you set it to the invitation only method, then none of these association records will exist, but you can create an action to just go create them all. You just have to, figure
Cool,
that
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
I don't need the invite, right? I need the middle one where it's viewable but not editable.
Oh, then yeah, that will work.
I think that, yeah, that's pretty straightforward then. But I wanted to ask about the updating, because I think to wrap it all up, I was going to say you can always set it up and then add, and then later restrict the collections, but I guess it would, in that invite scenario, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
Josh, did you need to talk through any of what you have set up for your app as far as like changing the setup or?
I guess how would I nest it as a child? Is it just under the settings? Is it just like a switch in the collections area?
Yeah, you would just go to the parent, whichever collection is the one that you're trying to lock down.
Mm-hmm.
And you would just go into the settings and then toggle that enable user restrictions. And then your access type in your case sounds like it'll be the allow users view only.
And then if I add a child collection to a parent,
It just rolls those settings to the children collections, but you don't have to have a child collection.
But to be clear, this isn't adding like an actual child collection.
yeah,
It's just creating that relationship, but just to make sure, yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
That's the confusing part, is like really to add a child collection, you just add another collection and put an ID field. So like if I wanted this to be my child collection of companies, whatever, I can put whatever else I want in here, and I just have to add company ID. And I don't even have to call it company ID, And if you
that's
put
what
ID in there, it's a child collection.
Yeah.
okay. That makes okay. So that's what I did.
Yeah. No, that's
That's what I
the
did
plan.
to make-
That's
And
how
yeah, you
everything
have
else
it.
is set up.
Okay, cool. That makes me feel good because I figured out it's displaying and everything like it needs to,
Mhm.
One caveat is I do need to still switch the rules for the editable stuff.
Yeah,
So
like
can I be clear on this? If you just create, does it care what the name is? So if you just create collection name ID, does it automatically creates that relationship?
well, so the thing that's kind of tricky is there is no actual physical relationship ever. Like even in
Right.
code, like there is no relationship.
There's no constraints built into the
Right.
database, right?
It's just like having the value of this be an ID, you know, and it can be like the field itself can be anything, any name, any type. But if the value is an ID, then on the front end, you just search through another table and you say anything with that ID. It's just like very like informal, but super flexible.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Kyle, it looks like you maybe had some question or wanted some guidance. If you're still on the call, you were saying, how do I link data get together? Maybe he can show real quick. Here's the site that I'm working on. And Drew, it looks like you chatted a link. So I don't know if you want to pull it up on the thing. So yeah, Kyle, do you want to jump on and walk us through your question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so when you, like, ideally, you would search for any given thing. In this instance, it's only searching for like titles and names. But if you hit that little gear on the right there next to the, yeah. So you would click, you know, one of those selectors, and it would pull the list to that search, right? So it would show those people associated with those individual tags. But I don't know, I think we're actually getting to this, but I don't know how to set individual tags to individual users that I create.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's like, again, like super flexible. So you could actually handle it in a couple different ways. The way that I would sort of recommend that's like maybe a little more thorough is you'd have a separate table that stores the ID for each of these and the ID for each of these. And if you do that, every record in that table is like giving you information. It's giving you a record association. So on the front end, you know, it might take a couple queries depending on what you're trying to display, but you can display anything. And then there's a different way you might do that, which we were talking about in the beginning of this whole discussion, where you could actually store an array of all of these directly in one of these records. That's a totally viable method, but I usually don't recommend it because it's trickier to do different things down the road. Like if you wanted to show a count of all of these that have, you know, the domains tag, it'd be really hard to get that count because they're all like sorted in arrays. So I recommend just like going through the upfront work, which is not too bad, but it's a little upfront work of creating the extra table just with those two ID values. And then when you search or when you query, like you're gonna have to do, you know, maybe an extra action in there to do an extra filter, but basically it's worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, and you can
Yes, I
use
just don't know how to do that. You know, I'm like really more design centric than anything. So like, you know, I come from like the web flow, you know, really just design oriented. So a lot of this stuff is just so perplexing to me that I'm just trying to wrap my head around it all.
Yeah.
It just, you know, it's awesome. I love it, but trying to get
It's a
it.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we could do, since we're pretty far on time right now, but what we could do is if you were able to join next week, we could just dive into your actual project and kind of guide you on any trouble spots that you're having. We don't have time to do that right now, but we could do it like at the beginning of the next office hours call, if that would be helpful to you.
Yeah,
just kind of
that
like
would be amazing.
walk through
I
and
do this process on like so many different sites, and I'm just like, I'll design it all day long, but I'm like, what do I do now?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard because we follow programming conventions. So it's like you're not just learning Builder at that point. You're like learning Builder and like how to make software. So it makes it really hard, but it's worth it if you learn that way, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm really excited about it. So I'll definitely jump on next week. And do we know what time it might be?
Yeah, so it flip flops every other week. I don't know where you're located right now, but it's 3:30 CST. And then next week it'll be 10 a.m. CST, and then 3:30 p.m. CST the following week, and then 10 a.m. But I'll chat it out.
5.5 hours earlier than this one, basically.
Well, I'm in Ohio, so I'll get it.
Okay, okay.
Oh, okay. So it's in the morning.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think 11 is that Eastern for Ohio? Or is
Yeah.
it? So yeah, 11 a.m.
11.
Okay. So I'll
Great.
make a note of that.
Yeah.
To kind of like walk you through that for the next one.
Well, thank you. You guys are doing awesome. I absolutely love Builder. It is just the coolest thing I've seen in a while. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all for jumping on and letting us help out with some of this stuff. I wish we had more time, but we'll definitely be at it next week. So great questions, everyone. George, Jeroen, everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day and weekend, and good night to those of you staying up late to hang out.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.